The general called her a joke in front of everyone. Tell me, mechanic, do you even know what it means to serve? Silence. Then Sarah Mitchell stood up, wiped the grease from her hands and pointed to the tattoo just above her collarbone. Coordinates, he laughed, but one of his aides ran the numbers. 5 minutes later, security locked down Hangar 7. 10 minutes later, a black SUV arrived. A man in a dark suit got out, took one look at Sarah and saluted. Now the whole base is whispering. Who is she really? And what the hell happened at those coordinates? Well, well, Morrison's voice carries across the hangar with practiced authority. I see our diversity initiatives have reached the maintenance bay. Tell me, sweetheart, does changing oil in a fighter jet make you feel like you're serving your country? The other mechanics freeze. Wrenches suspended mid-turn, eyes darting between Sarah and the general. She continues working, her focus seemingly unbroken, but Lieutenant Jake Peters notices the slight tremor in her hand as she reaches for another tool. Morrison steps closer, his shadow falling across her workspace. I asked you a question, mechanic, or didn't they teach you military courtesy along with your quotas? Sarah finally looks up, and for just a moment, something flickers in her eyes. Not fear, not anger, but something deeper, older, like the echo of distant thunder. If someone erased your entire life's work and no one remembered your sacrifice, would you stay silent? Let me know where you're watching from. 5 o'clock comes early in the high desert, but Sarah Mitchell has been awake since 3:30, her internal clock permanently set to a time zone that exists only in memory. Her trailer sits 20 minutes from base, a modest aluminium shell that rocks gently in the desert wind. Inside, everything has its place, tools arranged with military precision, a single cup and plate in the dish rack, a bed made so tightly a quarter would bounce off it twice. She performs 50 push-ups on the cold linoleum floor, her breathing steady and controlled, counting in a language that isn't English. The morning ritual never varies. Push-ups, shower, coffee, black as midnight, weather check on 3 different sources. By the time she arrives at the base, the eastern sky is just beginning to bleed purple into black. The other mechanics know her as the hydraulics whisperer, the one who can diagnose a problem by the sound alone. It's singing flat, she'll say, pressing her ear against a metal panel, and sure enough, they'll find a hairline crack in a pressure valve. She works with an intensity that makes others uncomfortable, treating each aircraft as if lives depend on it, which, of course, they do. During lunch, while others gather in the break room to complain about their supervisors or plan weekend barbecues, Sarah sits alone with technical manuals spread before her.
Those who've glanced over her shoulder have seen text in German, Russian, Arabic, Mandarin, just keeping my mind sharp, she says when asked, but never explains how a simple mechanic from Nowhere Special learned to read 7 languages fluently.
Young mechanics gravitate toward her despite her solitary nature. She teaches without seeming to teach, guiding their hands with gentle corrections, showing them tricks that aren't in any manual. Feel here, she'll say, placing their fingers on a component. When it vibrates like that, check the secondary stabilizer. The book won't tell you that. They wonder how she knows things that take master mechanics decades to learn. But she deflects their questions with half-smiles and weather talk. Tommy Chen once asked her directly where she learned her skills. Here and there, she answered, her eyes focused on something beyond the hangar walls. You pick things up when you pay attention. The scars on her wrists are barely visible now, faded white lines where tattoos once lived. She keeps them covered most days, but sometimes, when she's deep in concentration, her sleeves ride up. Maria Gonzalez noticed them first, recognized the pattern of professional removal. Bad decisions when I was younger, Sarah explained. But Maria, who'd seen her share of veterans with ghosts, didn't push. Then there are the other things. The way Sarah checks every exit when she enters a room, how she sits with her back to walls, the micro-flinch when someone drops a tool. The base psychologist would recognize the signs, but Sarah has never been to the base psychologist. She handles her ghosts the same way she handles hydraulic systems, with methodical precision and silent determination. It's the scar on her back that raises the most questions, though few have seen it. The desert heat can be brutal in the hangars, and sometimes Sarah works with her shirt off, just a sports bra and her coveralls tied around her waist. The first time someone saw the numbers carved into her skin, they thought it was some kind of extreme tattoo, but up close, it's clear these aren't decorative marks. The scar tissue is thick and deliberate. Numbers etched so deep they've damaged the muscle beneath. 34.7 degrees north, 69.2 degrees east, coordinates that mean nothing to most, everything to a few. She tells curious colleagues it's from an industrial accident, a reminder to stay careful around heavy machinery. The truth is simpler and more complex. Some reminders should hurt. Every night she applies a special ointment, not to heal the scars, but to preserve them, to keep the numbers readable. In the mirror, she can see them backward, but she knows them by heart anyway, could write them in the dark, in the sand, in blood if necessary. The announcement of the annual base inspection sends ripples of anxiety through the maintenance crews. General Morrison's reputation precedes him, a man who's ended careers with a single evaluation, who believes in excellence through intimidation. Sarah requests leave for that week, citing a family emergency that doesn't exist. Her supervisor, Chief Martinez, shakes his head. "Can't do it, Mitchell. We're already short-staffed and you're the best we've got." She tries switching shifts, offering to work nights, volunteering for the least desirable assignments if someone will just cover that one day. But the schedule is set in stone, and fate, it seems, has a sense of irony. The morning of the inspection, Sarah arrives even earlier than usual. She checks the emergency exits twice, counts the steps to each one, notes which windows can be opened from inside. Her hands, steady through 1,000 delicate repairs, tremble slightly as she reviews the maintenance logs. When someone shows her Morrison's photo from the base newsletter, her face goes pale. Just for a second, it's the first time anyone has seen Sarah Mitchell truly rattled. General Morrison enters Hangar 7 like a conquering emperor surveying his domain. His uniform is crisp enough to cut glass, his shoes polished to mirrors that reflect the fluorescent lights. The mechanics stand at attention, tools set aside, backs straight. His eyes scan the room with predatory efficiency, cataloging imperfections, filing away weaknesses for later exploitation. They stop on Sarah, the only woman in the lineup, and his expression shifts to something between amusement and disdain. "At ease," he commands, but his tone suggests anything but ease. He begins his inspection with the equipment, running white-gloved fingers along surfaces, checking gauges, examining logs. But his attention keeps returning to Sarah, who has resumed work on the F-16's hydraulic system. "You there!" Morrison's voice cuts through the mechanical sounds of the hangar. "The female, what's your name?" Sarah straightens slowly, wiping her hands on a rag that's already more grease than fabric. "Mitchell, sir. Sarah Mitchell." He approaches with measured steps, his entourage maintaining perfect formation behind him. "Tell me, Mitchell, what makes you think you're qualified to work on multi-million-dollar aircraft? Did they lower the standards just for you, or did you meet them on your knees?" The hangar goes silent, except for the distant sound of jet engines on the flight line. Several mechanics shift uncomfortably, but none speak. Morrison is a general. Sarah is a civilian contractor. The power dynamic is clear, absolute. "Real soldiers understand sacrifice," Morrison continues, his voice carrying the rehearsed cadence of a man who's given this speech before. "Real soldiers have bled for their country, not just bled brake fluid. So tell me, Miss Mitchell, what sacrifice have you made? What hard choices have you faced? Changing spark plugs when you'd rather be getting your nails done?" Lieutenant Peters, standing among Morrison's entourage, sees Sarah's jaw tighten, watches her hands curl into fists before consciously relaxing. But she remains silent, turning back to her work as if the general were just another desert wind to be endured. Morrison's face reddens at being dismissed. "I'm speaking to you, mechanic. When a superior addresses you, you respond. Or didn't they cover that in whatever online certification mill gave you that toolbox?" "Perhaps," Morrison says, voice dripping with false concern. "Our diversity hire needs a remedial lesson in military protocol. Stand up, Mitchell. Face the room." Sarah complies slowly, her movements controlled, mechanical. "Now then, why don't you educate us all? Explain to these real maintenance professionals how a hydraulic system works. Show us what taxpayer dollars bought when they decided quotas matter more than quality." The other mechanics watch in uncomfortable silence. As Sarah begins her explanation, her voice steady and technical, using terminology most of them need manuals to remember. But Morrison interrupts every few sentences with corrections that aren't corrections, questions designed to humiliate rather than educate. "Speak up. We can't hear you. Is this how you'd explain it if a pilot's life depended on it? Start over, clearer this time." The demonstration requires Sarah to lean deep into the aircraft's maintenance bay, stretching to reach a particularly complex component. Her shirt rides up, exposing 6 inches of lower back, and that's when Lieutenant Peters sees them, numbers carved into flesh like a brutal mathematics equation. His breath catches. Those aren't random numbers. The format, the precision, the coordinates, he recognizes them from classified briefings his father gave him years ago. Kandahar Province, Afghanistan. His mind races through possibilities, each more impossible than the last. Morrison, focused on his public humiliation, doesn't notice Peter's reaction, or the way the young lieutenant's hand moves unconsciously to his phone. What would you do if the person humiliating you had no idea they owed their life to you? Drop a comment below. Sarah's internal world fractures as she hears the words "Ghost Protocol" whispered behind her. Lieutenant Peters thinks he's being discreet, but her hearing, honed by years of listening for sounds that meant death, catches every syllable. Time dilates, stretches like heated metal. The hydraulic fluid dripping from the valve transforms in her vision, red now, warm, arterial. The smell of jet fuel becomes the acrid smoke of burning vehicles. The hangar's fluorescent lights morph into the harsh Afghan sun. Her hand moves involuntarily to her right hip, where a ceramic knife once lived, where phantom weight still presses against phantom flesh. 4 counts in, 7 hold, 8 out. The breathing technique that kept her sane through 43 days of captivity kicks in automatically. She sees herself reflected in the polished aluminum of the aircraft panel, not the 45-year-old mechanic but the 32-year-old operative, face caked with dust and blood, eyes hollow from seeing too much. The Sarah in the reflection mouths words in Pashto, a prayer or a curse. She can't tell anymore. Her grip on the wrench tightens until her knuckles white out, the tool becoming weapon, becoming anchor. "You okay?" Peter's voice, young and concerned, pulls her partially back. Her response comes from muscle memory, the same tone she used to use with fresh recruits who asked too many questions. "Just fine, Lieutenant." But she's not fine. She's in 2 places at once, straddling timelines like fault lines, and the earth is shifting beneath her feet. Peters excuses himself from the general's entourage, claiming an urgent communication from base operations. In the hallway, he makes a single call to his father, Colonel Peters, retired. "Dad? What's Ghost Protocol?" The silence on the other end lasts so long he checks to make sure the call hasn't dropped. When his father speaks, his voice carries a fear Peters has never heard before. "Where did you hear that name?" His father's panicked response tells him everything. "Never speak it again. Ghost Protocol doesn't exist. The people involved don't exist." But Peters has already seen too much. A quick search yields one declassified fragment. 50,000 lives saved. Female operative designated Ghost 7. The same coordinates, the same time frame. Morrison's squadron was supposed to die that day. Back in the hangar, Sarah has finished her demonstration. Morrison, satisfied with his public display of dominance, makes a final pronouncement. "This is what's wrong with our military today," he announces to the room. "We've forgotten that service means sacrifice, that honor is earned in combat, not in comfort. Real warriors bear real scars, not grease stains." He turns to leave, his point made. His audience sufficiently cowed, but Peters intercepts him at the door, whispers urgently in his ear. Morrison's expression shifts from annoyance to confusion to something approaching fear. He looks back at Sarah, who has already returned to her work, seemingly oblivious to the earthquake she's caused simply by existing. The flashback arrives unbidden, as Sarah's hands work on autopilot. Captain Sarah Mitchell, Strategic Intelligence, volunteering for a mission everyone knew was suicide. The briefing room smelled of burnt coffee and desperation. Al-Qaeda's had penetrated too deep, knew too much. They needed someone who could disappear completely, become no one, everyone, anyone necessary. The scarification wasn't her idea. That came from old handlers who'd learned from Soviet programs that sometimes the body must become the message. She remembers the medic's reluctance, the way he apologized with every cut. "Coordinates of the primary target," he explained, as if she didn't know, as if she hadn't memorized every latitude and longitude of every potential grave. "If you're captured, if you can't speak, if everything else fails, 2 years living as someone else, someone with a different name, different history, different dreams." She sold information to buy trust, gave up minor assets to protect major ones, watched good people die to maintain her cover. The Taliban commander who eventually claimed her as his intelligence prize never suspected that every piece of information she extracted from American sources was carefully crafted, each loss calculated to create a bigger win. She became invaluable to them, the woman who could predict American movements, who understood their patterns. Of course she did. She'd helped create those patterns, designed them with false vulnerabilities that would prove irresistible when the time came. The children changed everything, 3 of them, no older than 10, caught in a building marked for destruction. Her handler's voice crackled through the hidden comm unit. "Maintain cover, acceptable losses." But Sarah had already lost too much of herself to lose that too. She broke cover to save them, carried the youngest out herself, her carefully constructed identity evaporating like morning mist. The torture that followed was almost anticlimactic. They'd trained her for this, prepared her for every creative cruelty human minds could devise. What they hadn't prepared her for was the interrogator who recognized the scars on her back, who understood their significance and took perverse pleasure in recarving them deeper, adding his own annotations to her flesh like a brutal editor. 50 miles of Afghan desert crawled beneath her belly over 6 days. 6 days of moving only at night, navigating by stars and scars, leaving a blood trail that disappeared in the wind-shifted sand. The extraction point coordinates matched the ones on her back, someone's idea of poetic symmetry. She arrived 20 pounds lighter, delirious from dehydration, her final intelligence report written in her own blood on strips torn from her uniform. The ambush details, the weapon caches, the infiltration routes, everything needed to save Kandahar base and the 50,000 souls who moved through it over the next month. Morrison's helicopter squadron was meant to be the opening salvo, their destruction the signal for a coordinated attack that would have made headlines for decades. The erasure was thorough, professional, necessary. Captain Sarah Mitchell died in a classified file, her service records sealed, her existence reduced to a budget line item. The woman who emerged had a different social security number, a manufactured history of minor civilian jobs, no military connection beyond a forged DD-214 showing 4 unremarkable years in supply management. Her handlers gave her a choice of new lives: suburban teacher, office manager, retail supervisor. She chose aircraft maintenance, unable to fully separate herself from the machines that had defined her world. "Mechanics fix things," she told her final debriefer. "Maybe I can fix myself." He didn't have the heart to tell her that some things, once broken, can only be repurposed. Peters finds Morrison in his temporary office and delivers the truth in 3 sentences. "She's Ghost 7. November 2012. Your squadron." Morrison's coffee cup trembles as the implications cascade through his mind. The woman he just humiliated saved 50,000 lives, including his own. He returns to the hangar a changed man, his entourage noticing but not understanding the transformation. "Mitchell!" he starts, then stops, the words choking on their own inadequacy. "I need to..." She doesn't look up from her work. "Need to what, General? Check hydraulic pressure? It's at optimal PSI." Her tone is perfectly professional, utterly empty. "Don't," Morrison tries again. "I know who you are." Sarah's response cuts like a blade hidden in silk. "I'm nobody, sir. Says so right in my file." Morrison feels the weight of those words, understands for the first time what erasure really means. Kandahar, November 2012. The sandstorm grounded us for... Lots of storms in Afghanistan, General. Hydraulics don't like sand. She's giving him an out, he realizes, a way to pretend this revelation never happened, to maintain the fiction that keeps her safe. But Morrison's guilt won't let him take it. "You saved my entire squadron." Now she does look at him, and her eyes are darker than the space between stars. "I save aircraft, sir." "That's what mechanics do." "Why didn't you say something?" Morrison's voice cracks like a teenage cadet's. "I humiliated you in front of..." "You humiliated a mechanic." Sarah cuts him off with surgical precision. "The woman you're looking for died in Kandahar, officially, with full military honors and an empty coffin. They probably even played taps." Morrison sees it now. The wall she's built between who she was and who she's allowed to be. "I'm someone who knows that glory is a luxury for those who survive intact. Some of us came back in pieces, General. We don't get parades. We get hydraulic fluid under our fingernails and scars that won't heal. Now, if you'll excuse me, this F-16 won't fix itself." "What can I do?" Morrison asks, and for the first time in his career, he means it. Sarah considers him for a long moment, this man whose life she saved without his knowledge, whose career was built on a foundation of her ghosts. "You can remember that every person on this base bleeds jet fuel, even the ones you think don't deserve to be here, especially them." She turns back to her work, the conversation clearly over. But Morrison can't leave. He stands there, watching her hands move with lethal precision, understanding finally that he's watching a warrior who chose to become a wrench-turner, a hero who preferred anonymity to acclaim. That night, Morrison discovers the full scope of Sarah's invisible service. Anonymous donations to veteran families totaling 60% of her salary for 13 years. Innovations in aircraft maintenance credited to supervisors who took recognition she freely gave. The deeper he digs, the more he realizes Sarah Mitchell hasn't stopped serving. She's simply changed her battlefield. Morrison calls an emergency command meeting, prepared to restore her record, to give her the recognition she deserves. The Pentagon's response is swift. Ghost Protocol remains sealed forever. No exceptions. Morrison schedules a press conference anyway, drafts a speech that will end his career, but might restore hers. He's halfway through writing her Medal of Honor citation when she appears in his office like the ghost she's supposed to be. "Cancel it. Now!" Sarah doesn't raise her voice, doesn't need to. Morrison's hand hovers over his phone. "You deserve recognition." Her laugh is sharp enough to cut glass. "I deserve to finish my work. You think this is about medals, about having my picture on some wall of heroes? She moves closer, and Morrison instinctively steps back. Every war has two fronts, General. The one you can see, and the one you can't. I'm still fighting mine. Morrison struggles to understand. The war's over. We withdrew. You're home. For you, Sarah says, and her voice carries the weight of every soldier who's ever returned to find the war follow them home. For men who came home whole. But some of us are still in Kandahar every night. Some of us wake up speaking Pashto and have to remember we're in California. Some of us need a mission more than we need our names in lights. She walks to his window, looks out at the base sprawling under desert sun. You got to come home a hero, Morrison. Parades and handshakes and thank you for your service. I came home a ghost. But ghosts can go places heroes can't. Do things heroes won't. Let me stay dead, General. The dead are very useful. Morrison watches her silhouette against the window, finally understanding the weight of voluntary invisibility. I don't understand, he admits. Sarah turns back to him, and for a moment he sees through the mechanic's coveralls to the operative beneath. No, you don't. You came home to a life that was waiting for you. I came home to a life that never existed. A living skit, and dental records, and a Facebook account, her niece manager. Captain Sarah Mitchell has a grave at Arlington, with the rest. It's a crading. The true revelation comes as Morrison discovers Sarah's current mission. She hasn't retired, she's evolved. Every temporary duty assignment places her near persons of interest. The conference in Dubai, the vacation in the Philippines, 12 threats neutralized since her official death, all appearing to be accidents or natural causes. She's not hiding, she's hunting. Morrison's investigation also reveals his own uncomfortable truth. 3 operations that made his career were actually led by ghosts like Sarah. The real architects of victory were people who officially never existed. Within weeks, anonymous tips surface about his stolen valor. He's quietly reassigned to a desk job, the kind he once recommended for Sarah. Sarah's network emerges through careful observation. The janitor who checks more than trash bins, the gate guard whose questions aren't casual, the food service worker who monitors personnel patterns. America's invisible shield, protecting from shadows regular forces can't reach. She trains without seeming to train. Lieutenant Peters learns to read people through machinery, discovers how someone treats tools, reveals how they'll treat weapons, how they'll react under pressure. The Mitchell Protocol doubles as threat assessment training. Base efficiency improves 40%, but more importantly, an early warning system develops that doesn't appear on any organizational chart. 6 months pass in the rhythm of routine maintenance and invisible operations. Peters, now fully inducted into Sarah's shadow world, watches her compartmentalize, joke with young mechanics while tracking multiple threats. Morrison's replacement, General Hayes, treats all personnel with exaggerated respect, having learned what happens to those who don't. The base runs smoother, threats are identified faster, and no one quite understands why everything just works better now. The final test comes as Sarah identifies sabotage patterns in hydraulic failures across multiple bases. Components degraded to cause catastrophic failure under specific conditions, the signature of an operation she disrupted 15 years ago. She coordinates response without taking credit, feeding information through channels that make it seem like routine quality control discovered the plot. Hundreds of aircraft are quietly serviced, disaster averted. The official hero is a young airman Sarah had been training without his knowledge. Do you know someone whose contributions went unrecognized? Share their story in the comments. The ceremony takes place on a crisp desert morning. Airman First Class Rodriguez receives commendation for preventing what officials carefully don't call a terrorist attack. Sarah watches from Hangar 7, wrench in hand, proud of her student, who doesn't know he's her student. Peters stands beside her, understanding now that this is what real service looks like. Not medals or recognition, but quiet satisfaction of disasters that don't happen. Lives saved by people who never know they were in danger. The symbol becomes clear during an emergency that strips away pretense. A fuel leak threatens to ground half the squadron, and Sarah works alongside base medical staff to contain the spill. Her coveralls tear on sharp metal, revealing not just the coordinates on her lower back, but the full map carved into her skin. Each scar tells a story, marks a prevented attack, commemorates thousands who lived because she bled. The medic who treats her cuts is a veteran of the same wars, recognizes the artistry of professional interrogation, the precision of torture elevated to intelligence gathering. He says nothing, simply salutes when he's done, a gesture that says more than any words. Sarah nods, returns to work, but something passes between them. Recognition of membership in a club no one wants to join. Mitchell's mechanics grows organically, without structure or charter. Those who've learned from her teach others, passing on skills that are partly about maintaining aircraft and mostly about maintaining vigilance. The unofficial motto, never spoken but universally understood: service before status. They develop their own language, references that sound like technical jargon but carry deeper meaning. Check the pressure differential. Means watch for behavioral anomalies. Hydraulic harmony indicates all clear. Resonance in the stabilizers warns of potential threats. Real warriors, they learn, don't need medals. They need purpose, community, and the knowledge that someone, somewhere, is safer because they showed up. Dawn at Edwards Air Force Base paints the desert in shades of gold and shadow. Sarah works on an F-35, the latest generation of fighter, her movements as precise as they were 6 months ago, 13 years ago, in another life. The pilot, Captain Williams, mentions the hydraulics feel perfect, mentions it casually, like it doesn't matter, like lives don't hang in the balance of every properly torqued bolt. "You're the one they talk about, aren't you?" Williams asks, young enough to be her daughter, sharp enough to see patterns others miss. The ghost? Sarah's hands don't pause in their work. Lots of ghosts on military bases, Captain. Men and women who gave everything and got forgotten. I'm just a mechanic. Williams persists, the curiosity of youth not yet worn down by classification levels and need to know. My father flew helicopters in Afghanistan, said a ghost saved him once, said she crawled 50 miles through hell to deliver intelligence that kept his whole squadron alive. Sarah's expression doesn't change, but something softens in her eyes. Ghosts don't save people, Captain. People save people. The living save the living. And sometimes, if they're very lucky, they get to keep doing it. Still, William says, and her voice carries the weight of inherited gratitude. Thank you. Sarah looks up then, meets her eyes properly. For the hydraulics? Just doing my job? But William shakes her head. For everything else. For whatever you did that you can't talk about. For whatever you're still doing. The moment stretches between them. 2 generations of service recognizing each other across the divide of classification and time. Sarah considers several responses, discards them all as insufficient. Finally, simply, "Fly safe, Captain. Someone's waiting for you to come home." The camera pulls back. Though there is no camera, this isn't a movie. Just another morning at an Air Force base where mechanics work on aircraft and everything is exactly as routine as it appears. But look closer. See the custodian who checks more than trash bins. The gate guard whose casual questions aren't casual. The food service worker who notices which personnel eat together and which alone. Dozens of invisible guardians maintaining watch, not because they're ordered to, but because vigilance has become as natural as breathing. They're America's real shield, these ghosts, who choose obscurity over acclaim, who understand that the greatest victories are the battles that never happen. Sarah's voice carries across the hangar as she instructs a new mechanic on proper torque specifications, but her words layer meaning like sedimentary rock. Every connection matters. Every seal, every bolt, every wire. You're not just maintaining machines. You're maintaining trust. Someone's going to strap themselves into this aircraft and trust that you did your job. They'll never know your name, never think about you as they fly, but their life is in your hands. Heroes don't need headlines. We need hydraulic fluid, morning coffee, and the knowledge that somewhere, someone's coming home because we showed up. The new mechanic nods, thinks he understands. Will learn over time that understanding deepens with each aircraft serviced, each disaster quietly averted. As Sarah bends back to her work, the morning sun catches the scars on her back through the worn fabric of her coveralls. To most, they're just random numbers, evidence of some industrial accident, meaningless marks on weathered skin. But to those who know how to read such things, they spell out more than coordinates. They spell out sacrifice, determination, the willingness to become no one so that everyone else can remain someone. They spell out guardian in a language written in flesh and pain and purpose. The hydraulic systems sing their mechanical songs, tools ring against metal, and somewhere in the sky above the desert, pilots fly safely home, never knowing that ghosts keep watch below.